Hey everyone, welcome to the Get Your Life Together Girl podcast. I'm Danielle Van, a cognitive behavioral therapist, life coach, meditation teacher, and author. And this is your go-to show for a powerful blueprint to personal growth and deep empowerment. Here, we're digging into the 5 master areas of your life: emotional, mental, physical, spiritual, and financial health and well-being. So if you're tired of feeling stuck and ready to break through the barriers that are holding you back, whether it's trauma or you simply don't have the tools, you have found the right place. We're combining Eastern and Western medicine with real, raw, unapologetic conversations that's going to shake up your mindset, elevate your life, help you release the old, and move you into action towards the best version of yourself. Maybe you're struggling today and you're having a hard time finding a way forward. I want you to know that you do have the power to create a shift. Yet when we feel the heaviest, when the urge to give up becomes all-consuming, it's difficult to tap into our power and not just survive, but kick it up a notch. I want you to get comfortable, get into a space where you can change your perspective and regain control and clarity. And that's what we're doing today in this deep dive into reclaiming yourself in the hardest moments. So let's get real. The Get Your Life Together Girl podcast starts right now. Haven't we all sat at that crossroads? That space in our lives where everything feels like it's falling apart, and the mental, emotional, and physical, even spiritual and financial weight has us feeling like there is no way out. And we begin to turn into this feeling of wanting to just give up. It feels like everything that we want is impossible, right? It just is without our ability to reach it. And I want you to know that, again, we've all been there. But when we get to that space, we truly fail to stop looking at what really is our reality. The reality is it's just a moment, right? These things that are happening are truly just moments. They're not the definition of our entire lives. They are not everything that will be, in the future. It's just right now. So I want you to be prepared. What we're walking through today is not some fluffy pep talk that says, you can do it, you're going to be fine, it's okay, just pull up your bootstraps, pull up your big girl pants, and let's move forward. No, we're getting real, right? We got to get gritty in order to get ourselves into a new experience. 2 weeks ago, we talked about creating a life plan. And many of you reached out and said, that sounds really great, but right now I feel so overwhelmed and so stuck. I don't know what to do anymore. I answered a lot of you in email and DM from Instagram and TikTok, and I told you a very simple statement. And it is, the thinking that got you into the valley, into the moment where you feel so overwhelmed, so stuck, is not the same thinking that's going to help you get out. You hear that? I'm going to say it again. The thinking that puts you into the valley is not the same thinking that is going to help you create a ladder to get out of that valley. We don't solve problems with the same thing that got us there, right? Like, we have to reverse engineer our thinking. We have to lean in and say, hey, you know what? Things aren't working. So I have to change what's happening in my mindset in order to change how I feel, to change the moment. So let's unmask the urge to give up, right? Because so many of us get there. I have been there myself. In fact, just the other day, I was looking at some things for business, and I thought, why am I doing this? Does anyone actually care? Does anyone give a damn? What if I didn't post one day? Would anyone notice? And that's negative thinking, right? That's a space that it's like, hey, are you just tired? What's going on? But I want you to listen to yourself. I want you to know that just because you're here these feelings that you're having feel impossible doesn't mean that they can't change or that they're not momentarily just putting you into a position to ask you to identify what's working and what's not. When we have these feelings of giving up or nothing's working, I want you to do one thing, and it's the hardest thing that we do. It is to acknowledge it. You can't run from the feeling because it's going to come with you, right? You're taking you into the next experience, which means I'm taking my mind. So I can't run from this feeling. When I say to myself, I am failing, everything I touch falls apart. I'm not good enough. Look at me. People can't be around me. It's this conversation that we have with ourselves. You don't run from it. Instead, you stand in it. You take a moment to take a breath, inhaling through your nose, holding it for just a second, and exhaling it. And you pause and you say, what's the feeling behind the urge to give up? Is it exhaustion? Is it anger, frustration, this fear of failure? Maybe it's even hopelessness. Whatever it is, you must allow it to come to the surface. Again, the same thoughts that got me in the valley are not the ones that are going to take me out. But you have to listen to the ones that got you there. Let it come up. Let it be real. Because here's the deal. The more you suppress your emotions, the stronger they become. Right? So as we talk about 5 masters and we think about how much our thinking impacts every single one of them, we have to know that if something's off in my mindset, I have to be willing to lean into the thought process, into my mindset. I have to allow myself to feel exactly what I'm feeling. Now here's the big thing, without judgment. Let me get really clear with you on this. You're not your feelings. You're an observer of your feelings. I want you to think about that. I want you to know that when you look on the outside, on an inside problem, you're more likely to find solutions. So here I am. I want to give up. This is really hard. I don't know if anybody's paying attention. I don't know if I'm going to be able to get through this. I don't know if this shift is going to happen. I don't know what to do next. What would I do if I was on the outside? If I was just observing, if I was holding somebody else's hand, if I was the space holder here, what would I say? One, I would say, feel it. And then I would say, where is the power? Where do you have power in this moment? And I would hope your response is, in my choice. Let's talk about something that's so important, and it is reframing. We've talked a lot about that here, right? When we're talking about our emotions, we understand what they are. We understand that sometimes situations feel bigger than us. And we also know that we can dive into techniques that help us, right? So let's lean into that. Whatever it is, I'm not good enough. I don't have confidence. I'm not happy with my body. I'm not happy with this. Whatever it is, there's power in consciously reframing. Reframing isn't pretending that your struggle isn't real, or you're glossing over the pain, or you're saying, you know what, the situation will be okay. It's about looking at the situation through that different lens, right? Holding your own hand, holding space for yourself. Your brain is very, very powerful. It loves to tell stories. It's why I call it the storyteller. If you've listened to this podcast, you know that's what I call it, right? If you don't have all of the information, it loves to fill in the information for you because we like consistent storylines. It's how we process, right? So if we're reading a book and all of a sudden we get to chapter 4 and we're deeply invested, and yet page 110 through 140 is missing, we're missing out on the story. There's gaps, and our brain's going to try to create something here. That's what happens in the stories of our life. the experiences that we have. The brain wants to know, how does this end? How does this go? What can we do to do something about the moment? We can shift the perspective, right? We can get into a moment where we say this isn't permanent, but my mindset gets to dictate how I move through this. So I have to reframe the problem as an opportunity. I have so much information right now. I know that this and this and this isn't working for me. That is feedback from my experience. If I look at this as a teacher giving me feedback, I can look at the problem and decide, what do I want to do with the challenge? What do I want to do at this moment? If I know that this feedback is not failure, I have the ability to keep plodding forward in the path. It also means it's not the end of my road. You can create a metaphor for the tough situation, right? So I keep saying the thought that got you into the valley. So what if you look at the moment where you're creating change as a mountain that you're climbing, or the space, the ladder that's getting you out of the valley? Maybe it's a storm that you're weathering and it's a tornado that you're experiencing, but you know you can take cover for a moment, allow the emotions to come to the surface, and then decide what you want to do. You can reframe it into something more empowering. This is a gateway to get you into something else. Tests are there to give us the understanding of, did I learn something? Think about that. You're in school as a child or maybe as an adult, and they test you on the information. They want to see, how much did I absorb from what I was being taught in that moment? If I have that information, I can use that information as the movement forward. Your life is the same way. Things come in. I have experiences. The forces around us are asking us, what did you learn? How are you going to get this into full action in your life? How can you move this through the gateway to make yourself a better person, to make your experience better, to give you an understanding of what you need and want? Think about it that way. Give yourself a metaphor. When I'm in hard situations and the path isn't really clear, one of the things I do is visualize it. Visualize it from the start to the end. And I always visualize a door that is closed at the very end of the visualization. And I see myself reach in and open that door so that I can take the next step. I want you to also think about this. When we are in hard moments, our inner dialogue is so nasty a lot of times. Think about what I just said. I wonder if anyone would even notice if I didn't put a new episode out or I didn't post on social media. That is a inner critic talking, asking me to come into the moment and know that maybe my mindset's not there. Maybe my emotions are off balance. Maybe I'm just exhausted. Whatever it is, those are really good red flags to say, we're off balance right now. I'm out of alignment. I am not sitting with myself. I am not at home with me. Being your own worst critic when hard times hit becomes the barrier to everything. If you say, I'm not good enough, guess what? You're not. If you countered that with, I may be struggling right now, but that doesn't mean that I'm not good enough. It just means that I am in a space of trying to learn a moment. And that's where you have to gain control, because what you tell yourself absolutely shapes your reality, and it goes a step further than that. When I give my brain instruction, my brain does as I tell it to do. Do you hear that? I've mentioned on here so many times, if you've ever played that game, the yellow slug buggy game, where you're out on the road and you're looking for all of the yellow cars to, punch somebody in the car. And you begin to really see all of these yellow cars that the day previously you never had really full attention on. And it's like, where did all these yellow cars come from? Well, you gave your brain instruction to look for them. The subconscious goes to work creating what you're asking it to do. And so if I tell my brain, you're not good enough, you're never going to make it through this, nothing that you do works out, you are a complete failure, your reality is shaped by that because your brain is going to go to work finding all of the reasons why that is your truth. It's going to show it to you over and over again. It's going to mirror it to you. What you tell yourself becomes your reality. And so it is critical that you reframe and reprogram that inner mean person and say, that's bullshit. I am not putting up with me talking to myself that way. I have a close friend and man, her inner critic it's really rough. And it gets to a point where a lot of times I will say, will you please stop trashing my friend? Please stop trashing her because she's really amazing. And just because you can't see that doesn't mean that I don't see it. And while I'm not here to offer you outside validation, what I am here to do is say, that's enough. And so I ask you to invite yourself to say, that's enough. You have to challenge the thoughts. Again, counter it. You have to also replace self-doubt with self-empowerment. What are you good at? What is working for you? And no matter how small they are, give yourself an understanding that everything in your life is not falling apart. One small valley can be all-consuming, but you do not have to take this dramatic space of falling apart. It's not worth it. So when you're overwhelmed, I want you to begin to think about the situation and how can you break it down? I want you to focus on one task that you need to accomplish right now. Whether that's sending an email or making a call or clearing your head, because small wins create momentum. I'm going to say it again. Small wins create momentum. You do not have to sit in a space of not understanding what to do because you don't have the full picture. Break it down, get simpler, right? You don't have to know how everything ends in order to take one small step. Instead of saying, oh my gosh, I don't know how, or what if it goes bad, or what if this and this happens, and we're jumping from one chaotic thought to another, and intrusive thoughts are whooping your ass, right? Because that's what happens. I want you to think, how can I get through this next moment? What is my small win? What is my momentum keeper or even starter? What so many of us forget is that feeling of stuck is because we're taking no action other than thinking it to death, right? So the way it all works, remember, the thought comes in, the emotional body rises to validate or disqualify the thought, and then an action occurs. A thought can be another action. If I'm thinking something to death, am I creating a win? No, I'm creating a deeper rut, a deeper valley, something more that I have to work to climb out of. My small manageable steps are not focused on creating a deeper dig, but instead putting the dirt back over it and giving myself a space to create a ladder. And I have to remember that resiliency doesn't mean just bouncing back perfectly. Anytime I'm in a space where shit isn't working, there's a tornado in my life, I am not seeking perfection. I have to have the ability to adapt, to persist, and remain flexible. Self-compassion is where I look at a moment and say, I don't like where I am, but I have the ability to face this moment. I can be kind to myself through the adversity to allow myself to build the emotional strength to get out of the thought pattern. So often I talk to people about what happens when we skip our emotions. So when we have hard moments, when we're in that valley, the very first thing that we love to do is skip the emotion. We try to numb it out, and we think that's going to help give us some way to persist. And guess what? It doesn't happen, right? So we just go from thought to action, feeling numb, feeling worse. We can't jump over the feeling. We have to be in it. Those feelings, that understanding of the feeling, are the rungs of the ladder. It's what helps us climb out. If I feel this way and I don't want to, if I know it's connected to the thoughts that are happening, I'm going to give myself an understanding that I have to create something more in order to take a different action. I have to have my thoughts and my feelings working in congruency with each other in order to shift. That is the climb out. And self-compassion says, I can be gentle. When you allow yourself to make mistakes, to feel, to treat yourself with the same, that big hug that you would give a friend, you allow yourself to ground in the present. It's okay to say, I feel weak right now. I feel like I'm struggling. I know that I am, and yet I am human and I'm doing my best. It's okay. When we've been in the valley for quite some time, because that happens, right? Where we're just like, oh my gosh, I've spent so much time here, where years have gone by and I just cannot get through this. It's important to remember that the belief that you hold is just as important as the valley itself. If I continue to tell myself stories, I have the power to rewrite the story, right? But I also have to remember that as I practice these thoughts and I say that I can't, or I'm not worthy, I'm not capable, I can't handle this, and I continue to spend my life in judgment and not in observation, I begin to believe the story. And I have to really challenge myself to look for evidence that proves that that is not true. I have to think of the times in my life when I have overcome, right? Resiliency. I have to think about the big things that have happened, the career shifts, the relationship change, something personal that pushed me to my absolute limit, and think about how I made it through. I'm going to tell you a quick story. About 2 years ago, a little longer than that, maybe 2.5, I was really sick. I went for a run. I kept it from everyone. It was during the time of this podcast. If you listen to some of the older episodes, you can hear it in my voice, right? I went for a run, came home, went upstairs to my workout room, and began to lift weights. I began coughing, and in the cough, I began to cough up blood. It looked like a murder scene in there. It was terrifying. I'm immediately taken into the emergency room. Within minutes, they're putting me in an MRI. They come back in and said, "You're not going home. No matter what you do, you're not going home. There is something in your lungs. We're not sure what it is. We need to do some work. You could probably be in some pretty serious danger right now." And the word cancer came out. I was like, well, I don't smoke. I am very, very careful with my lifestyle. And you're telling me I may have lung cancer? Is that what you're saying? So confusing, right? So it was a small emergency room. They transferred me to a larger hospital where I stayed there for a few days. Everything from tuberculosis to cancer to we're not sure what's going on was tossed out. And I had to fight. It took a 1.5 years to get over what they would later discover was a mold infection. You know, we have these moments where the valley feels like we're spinning. You know, it was out of control. It was out of my reach. Something was happening to me and through me. And we have to remember that every time we face something that maybe we didn't ask for and we say, I can't handle this, that's the truth. I didn't allow that diagnosis to touch my mind. No, not for me. Thank you, though. I will take the medicine. I will do the work. I will do everything that you ask. I will show up to every single doctor's appointment, but it will not touch my mindset. I will not listen to you when you tell me that my chance of surviving this, if it spreads into my blood, is about 1%. Not happening. I will not listen when you tell me to prepare myself. I am already prepared to live. You have to understand the small things that happen, the big things that happen are not the sum of you. The only time they become the sum of you is when you hold them and make them your truth. You can be pushed to your limits, or you can define the limit. So every time you want to give up, I want you to say to yourself, I have something I need to do, and I must get through this. I have faced challenges before, and I have come out stronger. I have been in this valley, and I refuse to continue to dig. In fact, I'm going to lay down my shovel, and I'm going to pick up my tools to build my ladder. Repeat that belief to yourself. Say it out loud. Hold it in your head. Say it like you mean it, because somewhere deep down you do. And here's why I know that. If you didn't believe it, you would have already given up. So when you want to give up, turn that pain into power. I know your pain is real. I've felt it. I've been there. I'm walking with you. And I want you to know that you can turn it into something else. You can use it as fuel. It's not about avoiding the pain. It's about learning how to transform it into something that helps you climb. This is something I've done personally, and I want to share it with you. It's called the healing anchor. And the first thing that you do is let yourself feel the pain. Let yourself feel the emotions, the thoughts, whatever it is. Whatever you're feeling, whether it's sadness or fear or anger, you let it rise. And I know that is scary, because where is the end of it? And I promise you, there is an end. So don't push it down. Don't hold it, at bay, but instead feel the weight of it. Feel the weight of it in your body. And kind of locate it. Where do you feel it? Is it in your chest, in your stomach, in your hands? And then I want you to gather that energy. Yes, gather it, right? Imagine that you're pulling it all together so you can hold it in your hands like a ball of energy. And it's raw, and it's real, and it's a part of you. And then this is where the magic happens. You take that ball of pain or anger, and I want you to extract it and throw it down into the earth, like a ball that you're sending down into the center. And I want you to picture it going deeper and deeper into the ground until it's transformed into something good. Think about it being neutralized. There's no more power over you. But what you do feel is this sense of strength. So what you threw down is actually bringing up better energy for you. And you can feel that rise within you and feel the energy shift from that victim to power. Because you're transforming that pain into something that fuels you for your next move. And when you're ready, anchor into that strength. Place your hand over your heart. Absorb it. Feel it. This gesture is now an anchor to your strength. So every time you feel weak, place your hand over your heart and bring back that energy. It seems silly, but there's something beautiful that happens when we give ourselves the understanding that there is more to us. And that allows us to anchor into an energy that is not all-consuming in a negative way. And then talk to yourself. This future self-dialogue. We know that the self-dialogue leading into this space got you into the valley, and we're building our way out. So have a conversation with the future you. Imagine you've had enough, and you've made it through this tough time. You've come out of the other side. You walk through that door. You've created your pathway, and you're standing a little taller, stronger, more resilient than you ever thought possible. And imagine yourself face to face with you. What does she look like? How does he stand? What does she have to tell you? Ask him or her, how did you make it through? How did you keep going? And listen carefully to the wisdom that's shared, because that future you has already made it. So where have you been? Where are you? Allow the path to be shown. Give yourself an encouragement like you would to your best friend. Think your way into something better. In all of it, I want you to remember every time that you want to get up and leave and end it all and you're deep in the frustration, you are not defined by this moment. The only way that you are is if you allow the moment to win. So you have everything inside of you that you need to turn this struggle into strength. And without a doubt, I know that you can, but you have to believe that too. So when that voice creeps up and it says, I cannot go on, remember your metaphors, remember your beliefs, remember your anchors, remember that you are empowered to say, this is not my valley any longer. I am laying down my shovel. You can be empowered and unstoppable and still have things happen. You know that? You can be powerful and still have things happen. It's okay. You have to remember that the struggle is the teacher. Not why is this happening to me, but what is this trying to show me? Your toughest moments are sometimes even harder when we feel alone. I want you to connect with others. And if you say, Danielle, I have no one else, send me an email. getyourlifetogethergirlnow@gmail.com. Go to my website, getyourlifetogethergirl.com. You can send an email from there. I'm going to get back to you. Connect. It's the most powerful way to get through the hard times. Lean in because it makes all the difference. And I know sometimes we are so afraid to ask for help. We've asked before, our thoughts have been minimized, all the fears that we have are brought to the surface, and vulnerability feels like weakness. And we've been slapped with it for too long. But I want you to know that you went to the wrong person, right? We said it a couple weeks ago. When you go to someone and ask them for their opinion and they have an outcome based on your action, they're going to give you what's going to work for them most. But does it work for you? Lean into somebody who can connect with you in a way that they do not have an outcome that's going to benefit them in your struggle. You can get through anything, right? You can. You've done it before. You can do it again. I want you to think about all of the things that we just talked about. One, we have to acknowledge and not allow judgment to take over. We can reframe the thought and see this moment as a teacher, an opportunity, a growth. We can challenge that inner voice and replace the negativity with self-talk that works for us. And in that, we lay down the shovel. We break down the challenge into actionable steps that helps us build the ladder. We find kindness and compassion. We stay present. We anchor in the moment. We reflect on past resiliency and remind ourselves how you've overcome other struggles. Anytime that I'm feeling like I can't get through something, I say to myself, Danielle, did that mold win or did you? I want you to think about that. What is your defining moment? Reflect on your past resiliency. I want you to tap in to that inner wisdom and connect for your own personal guidance. Find meaning in the struggle. Reach out for support. You don't have to do everything alone. And remind yourself you're stronger than you think. Tough moments are not the end of your journey. They're just a part of the story. And you get to decide how the rest of the story goes. So keep going. Keep writing the story. Because when you do, it absolutely becomes the essential step into getting your life together. Thank you so much for listening to the Get Your Life Together Girl podcast. If you've enjoyed these tips for bettering your life, please follow me on social media if you're not already. On Instagram, TikTok, Insight Timer, Clapper, YouTube, Pinterest, and Threads at Get Your Life Together Girl. You can also visit my website, getyourlifetogethergirl.com, to book a one-on-one session with me, to read my blog, hit up my merch store, and find some tools that you've been looking for beyond this podcast. We've also added a subscription feature here to the podcast. There will be content uploaded every single week that you will not be able to get to unless you have a subscription. So I hope you'll join. If you have questions about that, email us at getyourlifetogethergirlnow@gmail.com. I want to thank you so much for being such a valuable part of this community. Please take time to review this episode, as it does bring others to the community as well. Until we meet again, be kind to yourself and others.